founder hand loosened its grip on the reins of destiny, will the sun to hold them without trembling. His father turned scratch hope into organized resistance into rule. How could any son step after the gain, not wonder weathering the fear? Sons who are born into comfort, and there are sons who are born into history. Orhan was never allowed the luxury of being only a child, only a dreamer. From a moment he opened his eyes beneath the shadow of the fortress, the world around him had already chosen his burden. He was the son. Be the heir to a struggle larger than one tribe and older than one generation. In every fire-lit gathering, in every council, where men of us spoke land, justice, and war, his name carried a silent expectation, not because he had earned it, yet because believe he must believe the more than any sword to a shield became the first weight he carried. People shook at his face and searched for his traces of his. They listened to voice and measured the strength hidden inside it. They watched how to read, how to listen, how to stood in moment of danger and thought no one said it openly. The question lived in every gaze when the founder then chosen its on the reins of destiny will the sun able to them without trembling, but the road toward power does not begin with the throne, it begins but doubt other. Orhan understood very early that intelligence is not the same thing as birth. A name may open a door, but it cannot keep a state standing. A father can inspire, but they can also bury him beneath comparison. For every warrior who loved Usman, there were whispered second son could ever shine with the same force. For every loyal elder who prayed for Orhan's success, they were who those feared the next generation would be softer, slower, miracles in the less wise in judgment. And perhaps Orhan feared the same things himself. He had grown up watching legend take from the blood, and he had seen men die for a dream, the barrier he had not described. He had watched one's footstep would despair. This is where cruelest truly begins, not in but in the private storm inside a young man who was dead. One day eyes of entire people rise toward him, and he still learning how not to lawyer his. The frontier itself shaped him before politics ever did. This is was places raised prince insulted by walls and servants. Orhan education came from dust, cold wind, bounder horses, sharp steel, and the silence that followed and ambushed the borderland were always speaking, always warning, always demanding. On one that smelled of a pine freedom, the next of smoke and mooring beneath fortress watched from his distance like clean teeth. Titters passed through that hid fear, greed, or intelligence meant for other ears. Villages prayed for protects, mother listened of foot had and young ups learned to celebrate universals because survival itself we were enough to describe. In such a world, Orhan did not learn leadership from books alone, from grand speeches before eager crowd. He learned it from watching whether people came down when a steady man arrived. He learned it seeing which commander inspired and which inspired only noise. He learned that there are moments when courage looks like charging into battle, and other moments when courage is standing and still, refusing to let panic spread. Every wound on the fortress became a lesson, every betrayal became a map, every betrayal became a reminder that the state, his father and build, survive on glory alone. It needed discipline, patience, and a rule who can understood both the fear of war and the fragility of those who had to live through it. Yet the greatest challenge waiting for Orhan was not enemy beyond the walls, tension within the camp itself, because when a state is being born, everyone claims loyalty while secretly imagining their own places in the future. Some saw Orhan as the natural continuation of Osman's dream, others saw him a youth who had not yet been tasted deeply enough. Some respected his claim and read it as wisdom, others mistook the same claim for hesitation. This is the currently of raising before women worship strength. It keeps spoke to. They call you reckless if you wait. You are bold. Thus ask whether you are weak. And Orhan had to walk between the judgment without allowing either one of to define him. Around him stood seasons varied who had survived impossible winters, old wounds, and brothers around him also moved ambitious men above with their hold while calculating with their eyes intent in every ride, in every council. He was being observed, not openly challenged yet, but because all the same. Would he lose his temper when inside? Would he pursue revenge when patience was needed? Would he cling medically when punishment was necessary? The fortune did not medically want a brave hair, it wanted proof. Son understood the terrible mathematics of rules where every personal feeling must be measured against the survival of the wolves, and still beneath that something different, that talking shape inside Orhan. He was not a mirror image of his father, and his differences would become the foundation of his character. Osman had through fight, through rebellion, through his will to a stable will word does not yet exist. Orhan's destiny would be to pressure, expand, refine. If Usman was the thunder that announced a storm, Orhan would have to become the revival that carried life after the storm, and the past required another kind of strength, not lesser, not softer, simply different. He had to learn how to transfer victory into order, into structure, and conquest into community. He had to understood that founding a state in one miracles, but making it endure is another. This is why he has years matter softly private wound. Every confirmation with doubt is not weakness in the script of his rise. It is the reason that rise become many. A man who never feared failing his people would never understood the cost of leading them. A son who never felt the shadow of his father would never know how to much light it takes it from honor. There were moments of course when the emotional burden became almost unable to be closed. The Osman being was to be inspired, but it to be reminded every day that history can make ordinary men feel small. Imagine hearing your father make spoken by various hardiners beyond tears. Imagine watching, imagine fear him, allies trust him, and entire tribes and build their hopes around his discussion. Imagine waking each day knowing that one day then same people will look to you with the same hunger for certainty. It one thing is that of the admire such a man Orhan, it is another to follow him. Orhan's silence in such moment was not impatient, it was the silence of someone listening to a future faster than he wished. He did not want honor without merit, he did not want opportunity prove, he did not want to sit in place earned by another man's suffering unless he could justice remain there with his own. That inner cord, though heavy, protected him from vanity. It kept him from becoming the kind of there who mistake bloodline of gathering. In a world where many noble sons were destroyed by organized before enemies, each them Orhan humility became a weapon. So the opening of Cruelest Orhan is not only the story of a successor waiting for his time, it is the story of civilization in transition, of a fertile posing for one day breathe between the founder and the one who must carry the foundation forward. The comparison still burned with Osman authority, but a new wind already began to move through the tents. Young warriors looked toward Orhan with clarity, elder wait him with his own memories and question hope. Enemies study in the family and wait for the lightness crack. No. Succession is often more fatal than sight, and everywhere between duty and unclarity stand Orhan himself, not yet fully rulers, no younger, simply son, or already being corrupted by destiny. He does not know exactly how history will remember him. He only knows that remember him. He only knows that remembrance cannot be his aim. Survival must come first. Justice must come. The people come first, and so before he ever claims power, before he ever commands enemies in his own name, before the banner fully into his hands, his true beginning is already underrated. It begins, its resistance in observation is hidden, but it quite forming strong enough communication. That is the first threat of Orhan's journey. He was never meant to repeat Osman. He was meant to prove that the founded could outlive the man who began it. By the end of this section, the council become a mirror of the state. If the council is united, the arms become stronger. If the council is divided, Enemies become hopeful. Orhan Bey's ability to control these rooms will decide whether he can control a kingdom. Bursa may be waiting outside, but the first wall Orhan must conquer is the wall of doubt inside his own council. Nilüfer haunts inner strength and the silent pain of love. Nilüfer haunts story in the cruelest Orhan is one of the quiet strength. Her pain is not shown only through tears, it is shown through silence, dignity, and the way she continues to stand even when her heart is broken. Many characters in historical drama show power through sword orders and political decisions. But Nilüfer shows a different kind of power. She knows the strength of a woman who is wounded but refuses to lose herself. Her love for Orhan Bey is deep because it was never simple. Their bond was born between two words, two identities, and two histories. Nilüfer did not come into Orhan's life as an ordinary woman from his own surroundings. Her journey carried change, sacrifice, and emotional risk. She chose a path that demands. That is why Orhan political marriage hurt her so deeply. It does not only hurt as jealousy, it hurts as a question. After all the sacrifices she made, where does she stand now? This question becomes the emotional heart of the character. Nilüfer does not want to become weak in front of the places. She knows that every tears can become gossips, every anger words can become a weapon, and every emotional reaction can be used against her. So she controlled herself. But control does not mean absence of pain inside. She is fighting a war that one fully sees. This silent war makes her character powerful. Orhan Bey also sees her pain even when he does not speak openly. This creates a heavy emotional distance between them. He wants to explain himself, but some explanations do not heal wounds. He may say the marriage was for the state, but Nilüfer already knows that her pain is not because she cannot understand politics. Her pain is because she understands it too well and still cannot stop her heart from hurting. This makes the situation more tragic. Nilüfer's strength will be tested by the people around her. Some may try to provoke her against Esporca. Some may whisper that she has lost Orhan. Hurt. Some may pretend to comfort her while secretly feeding her anger. This is where Nilüfer must be careful. If she silenced to poison, some may whisper that she has lost Orhan. Her. Some many pretended to comfort her while secretly feeding her anger. This is where Nilüfer must be careful. If she silence listen to poison, she may become part of the play's division. If she completely hides her pain, she may destroy herself from inside. Her challenge is to protect her dignity without becoming cold and to protect her love without becoming blind. Presence will naturally create tensions. Even if Esporca behaves respectfully, her position itself is painful. Her Nilüfer, every ceremony, every place arrangement, every public moment may remind Nilüfer that her world has changed, but Nilüfer's real greatness will be shown if she refuses to turn this pain into cruelty. A wounded person can easily wound others, but a noble heart tries not to spread it on suffering. Malhan haunt may become an important guide for Nilüfer. She knows what it means to live beside power. She knows that love is a ruling house is never free from politics. She may not remove Nilüfer pain, but she can help her understand how to survive it. Malhan can teach her that dignity is sometimes stronger than victory. A woman who keeps her dignity in pain becomes impossible to defeat. Nilüfer also has a rule. Beyond love, she can become a bridge between different communities, especially because of her background and her emotional journey. Orhan state needs such figure. Conquest creates new people under one rule, and Nilüfer represents the possibility of unity beyond birth and origin. Her loyalty or Orhan and the state can become is not built only by bloodline but also by choice, faith, and trust. This is why Nilüfer pain should not be written as weakness, it should be written as a transformation. She begins this phase as a wounded woman, but she can rise as a wiser and stronger figure. Her heart may be broken, but her mind becomes sharper. She learned who truly respects her and who only uses her pain. She learned that the place is full of masks. She learns that love alone cannot protect a person in the center of power. By the end of this section, Nilüfer Hound becomes one of the emotional pillars of the series. Her silence carries meaning. Her patience carries strength. Her pain carries dignity. She reminds the audience that history is not only made by rulers and worries, it is also shaped by those who suffer quality and still choose honor. Nilüfer's story proved that sometimes the deepest battles are found inside the hearts. Asporka haunt and the dangerous entry into power. Asporka Horton's entry into Orhan-based life changes everything. She does not enter an empty palace. She entered a house already full of memories, loyalties, old love, political expectations, and silence pain. This makes her position dangerous from the beginning. Some people may see her as political necessity. Some may see her as a rival to Nilüfer. Some may see her as a new source of influencers. Some may wait for her make first mistake in such a place. If breathing feels political, Asporka must understand that becoming Orhan's wife does not automatically mean becomes accepted. The place is not won by title alone. It is won by patience, intelligence, and careful behavior. If she enters with pride, people will reject her. If she enters with fear, people will control her. If she enters with wisdom, she may slowly build her place. This is why the character has great possession. She can either become a source of division or a powerful figure who strengthens Orhan's rule. Her relationship with Orhan is also complicated. Orhan may respect her and understand the political importance of the marriage, but this heart carries history with Nilüfer. Asporka must live with this reality. She cannot trace the past. If she tries, she will not create conflict. Her smarter path in the build her own respect without attacking Nilüfer place. There required emotional maturity. In a places, insecurity can become poison very quickly. Asporka also faces danger from people who may pretend to support her. Some may gather around her only because they want influence through her. They may praise her fears and pride and push her against Nilüfer. Her divided between sword and miracle. Every great political story become unforgettable when power collides with the heart, not because love weakness a warrior, but because love reveals what kind of power a warrior truly seeks. A man at war with the world can survive on preach, inscription, and force for a long time, but the moment he began to care deeply for someone beyond himself, a second battle begins. The battle is quite more intimate, more dangerous. Orhan's path was never meant by the mate only complex and counsels. His emotional life mattered because it exposed the exact tension that would define his roles. Could he carry the transport of a man's soul sacrificing the hardness required by the fertile? It many stories to there is tested by enemies outside the gate. In a rich story, he is tested by the publicity, by attachment of a fear to losing not just power or land, but on a person who has entered his heart and made victory feel incomplete if it cannot be finished. Share this is where Orhan character depends everyone the expected hours of success. Yet the women who enter such stories are often trusted by narrative as ornament, treated by lizard narrative as ornaments to conflict, but in a true political drama there are myriad challenges and turning points. The emotional world around Orhan could never simple and beyond the formed wall immediately be intelligent with loyalty, tribe, identity, religious democracy, suspension, and the brutal demands of war to last. A man frontier is not meet to institutions, it is not meet while carrying names, historical duties, and enemies. It is the background that is why Trendle. This is why Trendance on the border has such electricity. It does not float above reality, it resides inside danger. A look can mean trust offered where mistrust would be safer. A promise can feel heavier than our earth before a concert, and a moment of emotional honesty can change political calculation because suddenly the future is no longer no sacrifice. Sincere attachment would forces him to confront an uncomfortable truth. The man capable of building a state must decide whether that state will only know his discipline or whether it will also know his humanity. This is only a small question. Mercy, it is brutal. Age can be mistaken for weakness and eventually become feared even by those that protects. Orhan emotional struggle made him more than a sword in emotions. They made him reckon our contradiction. What does justice look like when the guilty are connected to the innocent? What happens when personal feeling and political necessity collide hit on? Only a future may allow him to trust, trained him to doubt. There are not private romantic confession discussion from governance. They are early rehearsals for rule itself. A man who cannot balance love duty will not suddenly become balanced. It matters of law and spy. If he become a slave feelings, the state suffers. It murders feeling inside the people live under a wearing a man faces Orhan greatness beings two enemies. How seriously he took his problem. He does not treat emotions as a distraction. He treated it another remedies in which must be for and the pain of fight in emotions because the closer a louder comes to someone, the more valuable his decision become. The enemies can use effect as leverage, rivals can compassion or favoritism, allies can question judgment, even loyal people can worry that he hears to become soft. Orhan had to endure the cruel reality that the very feeling provides his humanity could also be turned against to legitimacy. This is politically world's vision, intimacy. Nothing is allowed to remains purely personal. Every silence becomes a rumor, every kindness a possible alliance, every sacrifice a single other will try to decide it, and yet the breath also grants love in such a story. Its tragic graduation, it is not easy, not decorative, not detective from it is become one more battlefield where Orhan must what he is willing to risk, what he is willing to protect, and where he must draw lines, even when drawing those lines stares at him from within as the same emotions, struggle, sharpness, or understanding of the people the would eventually rules. A man who has only mastered domination, rarely understand loyalty is the fullest sense he would not options for but not the quiet reason why people stay faithful even why it's cost them. Orhan had divided into sword and mercy allowed him to glimpse their quieter motives. Him to glimpse those quieter motives, he saw how griefs can make a personal interaction, how loves can inspire courage greater than ideology, how shame can betrayal, how trust once broken cannot simply be ordered back into existence. The insights made him less negative and more just. They thought governing people is not like moving troops. Every law touching invisible emotion, hope, dignity, resentment, memories, every punishment carries symbols, meaning beyond the individual. Often every act of mercy can be able heal disabilities, disabling or receiving it can why the ruler who had never versus will his own divided her often rules often with curtailing him from becoming that kind of shallow authority. Still the story would mean little of his threatness come should without cost. The real transformation demands sacrifice. There are moments when the heart must except wound because destiny does not negotiate for Orhan loves could not become escape. He was not allowed the luxury of dominating responsibilities in the name of personal place. That what make him tragic and admirable, and once he longs but does not flee. He feels deeply but he does not let feeling rise him obligation. He wants a life affection, trust, and belonging are possible, yet the knows enemies are always waiting for preciously and valuable decide are often as leader posters. So he learned harsh discipline of carrying longing without letting it govern him. This does not make him cold on the only country, it make only him poignant. The audience sees not a man untouched by emotional but a man who pays for every necessary decision with pieces of himself. That cause is what gives his authority moral weight. This division between sword and also created one of the most compelling dynamics in a cruelest Orhan narrative, the transformation from reactive youth into mere statements. The younger version of a warrior often believes strength means of hesitating, never bending, never forgiveness. But an Orhan mature, he belongs to understand that the blade is only one instrument of order. Mercy, when he wrote it instead of weakness, can establish legitimacy more powerfully than fear. Protection can inspire deeply loyalty than domination. A ruler's who listens can sometimes prevent the rebellion a harsher man would accidentally create. Yet this broader vision does not assume the necessity of the sword, it only places the sword is a larger, smaller formwork. Orhan does not become less dangerous. He becomes dangerous in a more completely way. He can still strike, will punish, still destroy those who threaten the people, but he not longer confusion with leadership itself. He learned that the strongest state is not the one that skills most effectively, it is one that gives people the clearest reason to live faithfully beneath its order. So when he was Orhan standing between battle and tenders, justice and affections, law and compassion. We are not witnessing a side story, we are witnessing the creation of the exact rules history needs. A founders often imagine professions, fire builders of continuity must also understand healing. A state cannot expand forever on fury alone. Eventually, it must become habitable. It must become a place where wisdom believes someone hears them, where merchants walk the road enough to travel it, where children sleep because he walls will stand, where love is not crushed beneath tragedy or undivided heart, painful as it becomes the proof that the may one that achieved the balance. He remains a warrior, yes, he remains capable of iron, but inside him something else grows. He knowledge that true rules is not the endless victory of the blade, it is the difficult art of preserving a people without losing one's own soul in the prison. The night of betrayal, every rising power eventually meets of the darkness within. On board enemies beyond the frontier can be conquered, tracked, and confronted by betrayal. Betrayal is far more poisonous because its grown near must breathe firmly and from within shape of belonging. For Orhan, Threatil had to come a night when all the suspension of punishment whispers strangers glance, cloud messages and unsure converge into undisable truth. This is the more moment that separate a promising heir to hardness for political force. It is only thing that a declared enemy charging openly under a barrier. It is under to discover that the most dangerous than hand recovering are often is the beauty of such a turning point. Lives to lifelong usually being prepared beneath the surface. Betrayal is most devastating when it is roots maple to beneath the resentment in a man for felt unseen. Maple if grew from the Orhan rise would reduce another influence. Maple gold from enemy made are from Mabel on Griven's Ball's ear finally found the right reason to bloom into ruins. Whatever its original betrayed on the 14 never appears alone. It drives confusion behind. Messages arrive too late, petrol vanished, supplies fail it to reach the camp. A trusted road becomes a dead tram. Someone's excuse sounds almost believed until another detail shattered it. The camp feels ordinary on the surface, but underneath that ordinary rhyme sometimes has already been poisoned. It was climate. Orhan's greatest challenge is only merely coaching the traitors. It is preventing the entire structure of trust from collapsing around him before he does what this. The night of betrayal must be written not only a revelation but atmosphere. The only itself should feel tense. A speed for trains knows before the characters should do. Something scared is about to be broken. Horses grow restlessness. Messengers arrive breathless. A freckles in critics where shadow suddenly seems too deep. The wrong man appeared calm. The right man disappear at the wrong moment. Somewhere beyond the outer lights on safety, enemy's eyes wait with patient hunger, connecting inside the camp to open the gate wider than any battering ram could. Orhan, carrying all the lessons, all the previous years, senses that the danger is no longer and it has shaped, it has planning behind it, and when the truthfully finally be taught into open, it just hit with moral forces, not just plot conventions, because what breaks it is that instant is more than a strategy. It is the fragile human faith that shared fear, shared battles, and shared prayer should mean something permanent. Orhan's response in such a moment defined his maturity. A lesser man would he confuse ether by blind rage or by previous range alone would satisfy the ego, but might deepen the damage. Prevails would confirm every doubt his enemies already nourish. selfish. What makes Orhan complaining is that betrayal forces him to until emotion and control at the highest level. He cannot pretend not be feel to insult. He cannot act as thought. Translation is simply another technical obstance. It is personal and he it, but he also understands that personal fury must be shaped into public justice. The camp is watching, the elder are watching, the loyal fighter already shaken up to see whether he can become dazzling at the exact second. Standing is a hardness in maintain. This is where the future rules American with terrified Orhan does not dare the he resists through it. He chooses to think while bleeding inside. He separated rumors from act from the proof when from lawful punishment, and by doing so proved that betrayed my mate must that it cannot resist his judgment. What follows must be served not because currently is attractive but because it is desirable but because disable everything Usman built that cannot be treated a private disappointment. He representing a threat of community itself. His punishment therefore carries symbolic meaning. It tells allies that loyalty still matters. It tells enemies that internship corruption he has discovered not hidden. It tells undecided the Orhan is not a sentimental here unable to define the camp again wrote yet it punishment or complexity punishment matter. He understands his betrayal rarely belongs to one man alone. Behind every detail there is chain of weakness, fearful complimation, silent observance, careless guide. Rivals who enjoying the outside powers waiting to he the damage. So the night of betrayal becoming not just a reckoning with an individual but an of the entire environment that allowed treason to grow. Period change meanings, roots tied, authority lines sharpened, trusted people are elevated, allegations are forced into open it one world or response to not only anger but not an attachment. This is what disable a future founder of order from a miracle of one noble man still no can erase the emotional cost after betrayed. Every family's faces become more difficult to read. Silence feel heavier. Every kindness can look for a while. This is one of the loneliest stages in a leader life. Succession already live under security. Betrayed at his insolution, so that burden Orhan must continue leading while privately revealing the death of continuously. He has to keep moving, more demanding, keep providing. Even that part of him asking how many times trust can surviving became broken before it becomes weak to offer it at all. Yet this blindness, all deviceness, his evaluation, he learned his trustees cannot be enemies. The ethers cannot disappear. Our rules who trusted no one becomes slow rules. Our rulers who trusted without structure becomes prayer. So he begins a new kind of trust. One attached lens is a warm feeling and more is observed character, tested loyalty and shared responsibility. It is a colder system first but also a more durable one. He is no longer the young man simply hoping, no longer the young claim to be. He becomes a leader who knows how to build a condition where loyalty is clear and loyalty become harder to hide. The deeper tragedy is that betrayed over reprivations when people most need united. This is how hurt beyond the personal on the fragile. No community has no luxury of internal decay. Every division strengthens the enemies. Every judgment left can become opening. Every ambition feel who think he is only hurting rival may in fact burning the roof over everyone head. Orhan understand this more fully after the betrayal than after he realized that leadership is only about defeating declared opponent. It is effect continuously protecting the moral fabric of the camp from patient even greed and despair. A state can survive a military loss of internal souls remain full alive, but if its soul is poisoned, even mortality victory become temporary. This is inside must Orhan closer to the ruler. The must become not just a battlefield combat but a guidance for discipline and meaning. So the night of betrayal becomes one of the defecting passing in cruelest Orhan. It told him yes, but it also cliffhanger him. After that night, people no longer only Usman's sons carrying in expectation. They began to see a man who can endure internal collapse without collapsing himself. They are leader who can look at without alone it to turn himself into a slave or bitterness. They see that his passion was never blindness, his mercy was never helplessness, and his silence was never impatience. One can survive betrayed and responsible with justice, structure, and unshaken persist and has been crossed. The enemy beyond the frontiers may still attack. More losses may comes, more sorrow. It inevitable, but one thing can change permanently. Orhan is no longer waiting to become necessary. He has become necessary already. The birth of rule. This is the profound difference between inheriting authority and embodying it. Some point, every future rulers must stop acting like a man temporarily. Carrying responsibility itself has entered his bones. For Orhan, that transition is the true birth of rules. It is not marked by a crown louder on his head or by formal alone. It happens when people being to feel often before the say is allowed that all the follows him. When he enters a tense council and chaos organize itself around the clarity. When villagers hear he is coming and not to abandon their someone yet when then listen because his judgment lands but a force no longer border from his father names. This is not magic, this is automatically authority built through one's resistance, justice, and visible competence. The birth of rule occurs when legitimate stop being an expectation attachment to bloodline and become a force fact created by presence, acting, and trust. By this stage, Orhan's understanding of power has grown beyond youthful heroines. He has longer seen leadership only on the art of being the man is better. Bravery still matter on the frontier, it will always matter, but now he sees that running means running life at scales. It means roads must remain food must reach the open, taxes must not become prediction, law must become with him, and punishment must teach the right lesson. A rule must not only of the tax victory but of the next winter, the next generation of soldiers, the next villagers will judgment whether the state protects or mercy commands. Orhan minds will move. Orhan the vital dimensions. He learned to read strength not only in warriors but its system are disciplined tires in strength. A fair judgment is strength. A repair breach is strength. A local leader who feels fair heard instead of ignorance is strength. A market that can function without fearing robbery is strength. This expectation of visions marks its difference between inner trip. Here are state builders. Naturally, not everyone welcomes such a transformation. There are always men who are destroyed because order exposed them. Under loosely structured power, louder men can appear important. Under disciplined rules, their impatience becomes obedience. Or immigrants as a true center of authority of threatens exactly such figures. Some resistance openly through revival, other resistance pavishly through delay, complaint to selective obedience. They cannot necessarily hate the Instead, they simply hate a version of the state in which they are no longer able. Confusion for private advantages. This is a birth of rules in never smooth. Govern well is too often man hidden interested at once or harm beings to understand that resistance does not always come from enemies wearing different colors. Comes often from the chosen who claim the same mission but cannot bear behind places beneath a stronger order dealing with the required finance without unnecessary skeptical. Every operation watches every underration inflows again and again. Orhan proves himself through properties. Another sign that rule is truly begun born in it him coaching changing in relation to time. A youth lives in urgency. Rules lives in the younger warriors think in terms of intimate honors, instant answer visible. The maturing rules in lawyers, what happened in punishment now, what happens if I delay, what predicting does that set work message does he send it a loss, what does a loss, what does fight it lied 3 months from today. Orhan became dangerous because he starts thinking like his while still retaining a barriers coaching men who only think are long term may become detected. My man only fails the prevent becomes recklessness or ungrantless lies combining times with immediate resolve. He can plan without deflecting. He can strike without losing protective. He can carry memory and protective in the same decision. Mind him preciously what a growing stage need founding energy can conquer, but only disciplined time conscious rule can endure this much. Also changing how people love him in the beginning. Affection or Farhan many comes from tenderness towards Osman's sons about the future or admiration for youthful bravery, but as rules is born in him, loyalty becomes more settled, and some serious people do not mirror hope to success. They begin to rule on him that shifted incomes. Hope is emotional, is political. Once the people really of a leader, his mistake weight more heavily, but his success blind more deep. Orhan earned that reliance because he gradually department a real balance. He listened without drifting, commands without vanity, punished without future. This is one of the clearest a sign of a genius rule. The leader no longer chases imagine because function itself has become his imagine. He is believed he because he has become believable, yet it birth rules is still faithful. The more Oran becomes unnecessary to the state, the less room remains of private self untouchable by duty. He must give more of his whole, more of his passion, more of his emotional energy to matters that do not. Whatever he is tried, he must absorb other people, panic, grief, confusion, greed, and fear while continuing to look steady enough that they can keep moving. The ruler becomes, in a sense, a character for existence for everyone around him. This is a lonely transformation. Those closest to him may still love him, but fewer people can speak to him without also speaking to power. He now carries the simplicity of friendship becoming rare. Supportment emotions must be filtered through responsibilities. Every silence changes silence in every ordinary man is perfect. Silence is a ruler must learn to live inside that already reality without becoming emotionally demanding by it. This is the part of the price of rule. What makes his rise so powerful is that he does not respond to his burden into pure distance. He retains a memory of suffering. He remembered the village, the funerals, the betrayals, the love that could not be simple, the doubt that once kept him awoke, the pressure of peace. Meyer against a feather too great to escape. Those memories do not vanish when power arrives. They become the moral roots of his government. Because he values clarity. Because he has no grief. He takes loss seriously. Because he has felt the effect of betrayal. He understands why justice must be visible. Because he Orhan's personal history becomes political wisdom. Rule is not born in him by Urziel, the Urziel man. It is born by intelligence. Everything that earlier men survived. So when he speaks of the birth of rule is Orhan, we are speaking of a transformation as intimate as it is historic. A new political order begins not only for a front stake enterprise science, but is the internal of the person who must carry it forward. Orhan became that he does not merely step into power, he becomes a vessel through which the state gains time, memory, and directions. The people begin to see that Osman's legacy is not ending in his sons, it is changing from the founder. Fight is being translated into a rule structure, and that translation is one of the most difficult achievements in any civilization. Many sons inherit victory and wasted it. Many heirs receive loyalty and practice it. But when rules truly born inside the right man, inheritance stop, begin, decline, and becomes a conclusion. This is the Orhan's crosses, and once crossed, history in itself began to lean toward him. The dawn of Orhan. Every age has a morning when the old light is still visible, yet the new light is already the sky. That is the emotional and political meaning of Orhan Dawn. He does not rise by earning Osman, he rises because the word Osman created on required as different kind of struggle to these destinations matter deeply. The greatest higher are not copies, they are answer to new conditions, roots into other truth. Orhan Dawn arrives when the people begin understand that continuously does not mean repetition. The dreams remains, but the method must involve. The banner still carries faith, justice, and resistance, yet the hand holding it on must now in border horizons. The fortines remain dangerous, but the state is no longer fighting to the bone. It is fighting to endure, expand, organize, and mature. This is why Orhan ambitions fields are often he is stepping into a living mission that has outgrown its first form and now asks from refinement without surrenders. In this new stage, the weight around Orhan changes. Earlier, he has watches as a higher than he was tested as a commander. Now he began to flat as a horizon. People do only ask what he will do in the next battle. They begin to imagine what the world under the long rules could become. That is a profound shift to inspire to be in immediate victory in one talent to inspire belief in future stabilities. Another began to think the roles become shaped. Next session, scholar and judge begin to imagine the order then taken doppel roots. Villagers starts to see the state not just a shield against enemies, but as a structure that might improve ordinary life. Even warriors who often live from campaigning to completion begin to sense that their sacrifice may be building sometimes some immemorial chains of glorious rate. This is what dawns does. It does not materiality brightness the present. It makes become believe there will be able tomorrow or more preparing for. Of course, dawn is not space. The enemy do not despair because our rules rises in many a way. They become more dangerous because they will understand that times may longer work by Favor a divided fortune is easier to manipulate than a chooser state. A gimmick scam is easier to provoke than a disciplined one. A succession carries easier to exploit that a successor who already proven himself through justice has commands, so the competitions to or on down must interfere will scams harder rivals power will test boundaries. Hidden enemies within will search for fractures that can no longer reveal themselves easier, but Oran now stood differently before all of it. He is no longer that is why Orhan Americans feel so powerful. He is not stepping into an empty legend. He is stepping into a living mission that has outgrown its first form and ask for refinement without surrenders. In the new stage, the assembly wait around Orhan changes. Earlier, he was watching as then he was tested our commanders. Now he began to fight on a horizon. People do not only ask what he will do not in the next battle. They begin to imagine what he would under his long rule could become. That is a profound shift. The inspired to believe in victory in one talent to inspire believe in future stability. Another traders begin to think the roads may become safer. Next session, scholar and judge begin to imagine that order and taken deeper roots. Villagers start to see the state not just as a shield against enemies, but as a structure that might improve ordinary life when often life from companion. The companion begin to sense that their sacrifice may be building something more durable than a chain of glorious raid. This is what town does. It does not merely brighten the patient, it makes people believe there will be able tomorrow worth preparing for. Of course, down it is not peace. The enemies do not despair because our worldly rules rises in many ways. They become more dangerous because they now understand that many no longer be working in their favor. A divided fortune is easier to manipulate than a chosen state. A glimpse scam is easier to provoke than a discipline. One session carries is easier to exploit than a successor who can already proven himself through justice and command, so that the options to our hand down must independently secure will scatter harder rivals power will test boundaries. Hidden enemies within will search for fractures that no longer reveals them easily, but Orhan now stand differently between all. If he is no longer acting as a young man in formation, he is shaping the find itself. He knows that strength must be is mere way that the lost community concludes the license must be weighed against its military, that propensity is not separate from defense, and that the most powerful answer to enemies in is often a state functioning better than the enemy affected possible. This is also where Oran Moral's identity reached its clarity from. He has not become from but the had become goal. He can vigor war without he can show mercy without being ruled by sentiment. He can punish without enjoying humiliation. He can listen without surrounding commands. These balance are difficult enough in ordinary life. Enough for time rules their expression, and because he carries them authority occurs the speed. People do not simply obey him because he can complete them, because believe his rules contain meaning. Meaning is what makes power durable. Fear can silence meaning, can bind a community that believe its rules survive. A just order will endure hardship differently from what feels mercy controlled or harm don't matter. It suggested the may become only strong but intimate in the deepest sense, capable of asking sacrifice while still giving dignity. There is also some quickly tragic in the victory. Every town is also an ending for Orhan to fully reigns. The last remnant of his simpler self must find the son who once beneath his father's shadow with private uncuriosity cannot remain unchanged. Now the victory calls his forward by name. The young man who declined, hesitated, and longer without fully claimed by rule by already been sacrificed to make him the rule. This is not failure, it is the hidden cost of generated. People celebrated the reigns, but the dreary mounts what had to be surrendered for the occur. Orhan loses anonymity and the possibility of a life shaped mainly by personal choice. It retained he gains responsibility vast enough to avoid him. That in change in the court tragedy. And yet there is hope is that sacrifice because Orhan's story does not end itself here. It ends legacy confusely embarrassed. He is understandable. Now that history is not made only by heroic movement, it is also made by continuously by patient governments, by institutions, by discipline, by successions, by justice repeated until it became expectation rather than surprise. He sees better than the battlefield. He sees schools, just roads, markets, mosques, families, farms, and cities not yet fully secured. He feels that he found out dreams was never made to fact an enemy. It was to create a world in which beliefs could live with ordinary dignity and protected purpose. Or hand down in powerful because he finally steps into the wonder vision without fear of being accused of being different from Usman. He no longer needs to intimate hundred. He has become the keepers of morning. So the final moment of rulers or hand should not feel like a construction crypt. It should feel like the beginning of a larger civilization taking breath throughout one man's maturity. The people gather not because all suffering has ended, but because they believe suffering is serving direction. The warriors stand stature not because the danger is gone, but because danger no longer feel meaningful. As the humanity watch with fresh concern because the old hope internal collapse is spreading. The orders remembering Osman and sees Orhan not un but his community's worth of the originally oath and Orhan himself carrying grips, discipline, animals looking and hard entered authority looks towards the horizon not as a boy mirroring himself against his father but rules are mirroring himself against the future. This is the final truth of race. Rulers Orhan is not only simple the story of a son taking power, it is the story of a new stage is statehood, our newly right themes of leadership and a new answer to the question every civilization must eventually face. Can what he founded in pen survive into form in Horan then becomes yes is willing to be wounded into wisdom. Yes, if it does not betray duty and duty does not murder mercy. If he betrayed sharpness justice rather than responding mercy. Yes, it understood not a privilege but a burden accepted in full. Yes, it down belongs to a man who can struggle without meaning collapse and meaning without stretch in devotion. Or hand becomes that man heart and because he does the barrier does not fall with the unfounded then final shadow it regains in a new light carried forward by a ruler who has learned that history is inherited rules. It must be earned, protected and ransomed by every generation. A founder can produce heroes but codes rules differently. No one open border courage is visible. A man charges defect bleeds survive and his own can be measured itself miraculously because an army appears outside its walls. A city must be studied, pressured, surrounded, strive or organized before it opens. It gives to a new age. This is Orhan's struggle enters another phase. He is no longer dealing only roaming danger. Trajectory is trenched on unreachable rhymes, often warfare. Now he must prove that the will frog in the plains can end. The patience required by stone the enemies behind city walls does not always lose by fear. Sometimes he loses by exhaustion, sometimes revealing that must be to him, only to realize too late that time so quickly become the weapon of the waiting outside for Orhan. This kind of conflict shaped into tragedy. The city standing before him is more than a military tragedy. It is a symbol. It travel, carry pride, memory, and the stubborn belief of that the old order can still outlast the rising one. Inside those walls lives governments who can mistake higher prevents they stick stone can replace intimately. They imagine that because they have survived other pressure, they will survive this pressure. One to one, but one Orhan understands something essential. No city is constructed only from the outside. The only city from first collapsing inwardly. Food grows scarce, trust erodes, confidence turns into blame. The same walls that once made people feel protected begin marking trapped. The rules within start lying more loudly because they know throat is become dangerous. Marching lost faith, soldiers calculate escape brave with less certainly. Cities begin asking whatever then men defending them still men have a lower mercy standing like their own dignity and the public expense. Orhan knows that science is not only about surrounding a place, it is about making the people inside see the future has already moved beyond the pride of those clinging to the past. Yet patience of this kind of punishing barriers raised on rapid action do not naturally loves waiting. Camps grow restless. Supplies must be managed with precious discipline become important and courage. Every day that passes without dramatic changes invite doubt. Men begin mature that direct assault would be more horrible. Others fear that delay makes the army looks weak. Still others worry the enemy may be receiving aids unseen routes. This is the ruler lonely place again. Orhan has to absorb the impression of his own side while refusing to be betrayed by it. He stand in the middle of tension and hold the lines of purpose. If he stalked the early he was wasted sleep of provide. If too long without visible progress, morals manifest, so he transformed waiting into action. Routes with our information is gathering pressure point are in local population are approaches not as enemies must be crushed by but as people who only eventually live under new rules. This is correction or harm do not ashamed where government should begin. He wants a city that one function after submission, that one previous he is no more writer. He is already thinking like a sovereign. Inside the walls, the fetcher sense the danger differently. At first, the mocks the patient outside. Then they start restricting it because impatience can be answered, fury can be manipulated by a disciplined enemy who keeps tickling without wasting himself it for more frequency. That enemy's suggestion confuses the suggestion that he not therefore separated. He is there because he intends to remain until history changes shape. The physiological effect of such resolve is enemies. The defender begin to among themselves, one faction that navigation, another wants harsh control over the population, another dreams of escape while still pretending loyalty. This is how cities begins to break, not when stones crack first, but when continually does. Orhan knows he stand feet without curtly sake he let truth reach the right ears. He makes sure the people understand words sort of the rule waste beyond understood just matter here. Reputation when its city believes only mere weights resistance hardness. It is began to suspect that order, law and may await instead the normal landscape changes. The greatest trumpet for Orhan in this phase is not that the defect forces but that the refined victory itself to that older mindset. Victory means intelligence. A city will the stored will warms to orphans. Victory means making the city part of the future rather than moments of destruction. He wants the gate open to rules, not miraculously broken by rage, that require discipline broken by rage, that many around him, many not even understand its depth. Resistance always looks like smaller than fury in the moment, but history often crowns resistance because it prevents that fury cannot rebuild. When rebuild shift finally comes, it is only milliliter. It is civilization. The city realized that the men outside are not temporary, they are not text order, and order realization spread through. The walls have already fallen in spirit even before their gates open. In fact, so the city that refused to bow became one of the clearest proofs of Orhan natures. He does not simply conquer resistance, he outlasts arrogance, he turns passion into pressure into invisibility, and invisibility into rules. His men learned that strength is not always loud. He enemies learn delay no longer deserve them, and the people from inside and outside like begin to understand like this. Passing away mere step, the banner crash. Their stretch is only mattered by banners of war. It is the banner replacement of country of the town that was the walls to Harriet and Carrotis of the price of victory, but every victory arrives carrying a bill. That is the depicts truth of power. Events, rights, light prevent even justice evidence ever. When the enemy's pride finally breaks, Trump never comes untouchable. It brings windows, empty place at the fire, and cues horses, coaches, field, and man who can shears and cracked boots because he knows exactly how is missing from the celebration. Or Orhan understands this is the way only wounded louder can. He has reached the stage whose success no longer exclamation. It is not only men have. He does not look at his victory and see only expansion. He has only his cause. He cost, but he is the deeply paid. He contained promise. He detect will never precisely collect. He count how much discipline it took to prevent chores from showing the achievement. The sober relations to trims is not advantage, is dismissive spirit. It is advantage that has grown too serious to be seduced by surface glory. Among the most painful confusion of victory of action itself, once a leader's successes at a high level, everyone around the becoming more demanding. The people no longer ask military whatever he will survival that the will next. The variant no longer whether he is worth that the cannot take. The allies no longer at this matter. They ask alignment with him required. When every changes patiently, they stop treating him or requires they are treating him historical one. This increases attention itself a burden. The higher Orhan rises, the less small mistake begin to widely directed indirectly more people miracle toward but marble alarms to another administering failures that can would have been dismissible. Fortune disorder now looks like cracks in rule. The privacy of victory then is only blood already splashed. It is the narrowing room to anything less than excellent afterward. This is the where many rising leaders being to fall, the learning how to win, but now how to carrying winning, the become inflicting by expectation, overconfidence, in careless with admiration, dissimulation, observation, surrounded by flatters who them that moments a sound will assertion the future or hand sense this danger are in the future. It can make men believe that because they were current yesterday, they are automatically currently tomorrow. It can attract opportunities, destructive or sporties. It can make harshest politicals feel justice simply because success appear to confirm the hand that impose them. So after Trims Orhan does something, trails are become more cautious about himself, not less. He does not interpret victory as proof that he has transit error. He impacted it proved that more depending on his now his before. The humility inside success is a major success repertoire rather is decay. Yet humility does not mean weakness or Orhan. It intelligence are led grief of soften. The discipline needed after conflict are newly secured places is often dangerous than the openly hostile one or slight remain hiddenly resistance survival public silence may complete outweigh light weight. From the first sight of internal future, Orhan responds by making over visible the understand his people emerging from the judge never power quickly if the first day and marked by confusion that revenge killing or liberty log intimately when repellents fully from so move when from clarity he establish protection from the innocent. The innocent uncontrolled violence from his own side. He ensured that he begins speaking from the uncured. This is not softness toward the defected, it's struggle mortality. This is the newly strategic people what his order from the organist that rules them before. Still before our arrived private moment, then the price of victory moment because there are the four few every scene the commander dismissing everyone the Turkish lawyer and silence return more honestly appealable in such moment. Orhan cannot hide from memory he sees against the men who rode beside him and will never ride again. Promises made before battle was ending he could not protect his tires name in his dead public supremacy the honor but never returned. The grief does not vanish because the banner flies higher in some way independent because success makes ambition sharpen. The human heart is securely precious that way it can celebrate and mourn at once. And Orhan because he has killed his heart to become fools because realities together. This is why authority keeps moral depth. He has not learned to treat it by man numbers merely because history rewards outside. He still knows each outcome carried by leaves. The prices of victory also enter his relationship. They are necessary. He becomes more difficult. It is Orhan to reach simply Orhan him a father away now. Some fear disappointing him, some affair only with request to concert to struggle calculation even affection approaches him with the request consort to struggle calculation. Even affection becomes fractional to route around the bond of commands create. Invisible walls is one of the least spoken yet most miracles. Cost of power. The successful ruler is often unsurrounded, praise needed, and yes, privately insulated. Everyone sees what the carries of the burden of commanded created invisible walls long before foreseeable though the solitude it once last spoken. Yet most miracles cost of power. The successful rule is often surrounded, praise is needed, and yet private insulated. Everyone sees what he carries for the few sees what the carries alone, but rather than collapse under the solitude or learns to consult it into clarity. He is to seeking concept emotional confirmation. He roots himself instead in duty, memory, and the long line of purpose, conquering his father vision of his own stewardship. Thus, victory become not an ending but a perfection. It fractional aware vanity, childish ideas, romance when the illustrious that primacy reveals responsibilities in or case it makes him more legitimate preciously because he refused to behave like some man drunk on success. He remains hungry not for applause but only he want to deserve what he began. He want to deserve to he to cry for more than temporary surge. He went to cities and villages and temporary surge. He wants the cities and villages entering his rules to feel Not only that new master have arrived, but that new master have arrived, but that our older has begun. The hard and almost scared captured from the many worries history forgets after their loudest battle aura that decide hard and almost scared separates him from the many worries history forgets after their loudest battle aura the decide here and almost scared separates him from the many worries history forgets after their loudest battles aura battles varies history forgets after their loudest battle aura. The rise of Orhan Bey and the shadow of Usman Bey. Cruelest Orhan is not just a new chapter in a historical drama, it is the beginning of a heavy responsibility, a responsibility that does not come with comfort, peace, or easy victory. The story begins in a world where the name of Usman Bey is still alive in tent, every sword, every battlefield, and every heart. Usman Bey built a state from pain, sacrifice, patience, and faith. But now, the question is not only what Usman Bey created. The real question is who will protect it, who will expand it all, who will carry the drama into a stronger future. This Orhan Bey stands not as simple son of a great father, but as a man who must prove that he is more than an he must prove that he is a leader. From the first moment, Orhan Bey's journey feels different because his enemy is not only outside the border. His biggest battle is also inside the state, inside the tribe, and even inside himself. Everyone knows Usman Bey's power. Everyone remembers how he stood against Byzant's traitor Mongols and viral Beyliks. But Orhan is now facing a more dangerous test. He must lead people who still compare him to his father. He must make decisions while every eye is watching him. Some people want him to success, some secretly wait for him to fail, and some only obey him because of Usman Bey's name, not because they fully believe in Orhan yet. This is the true emotional pressure of Cruelest Orhan. The series How Should Dad Leadership is not only about winning wars, leadership is also about patience when people doubt you, silence when enemies provoke you, and wisdom when you know or people expect quick reactions. Orhan Bey understands that the sword is important, but the sword alone cannot. But an empire, a state needs stately alliance, justice, trade, loyalty, and a strong mind. This is why Orhan's character is powerful. He does not only fight with anger, he watches, waits, studies, and the strike and the right time. The shadow Bursa is one of the biggest parts of this new story. Bursa is not just a story city, it is a symbol for the Turks. Bursa represents the future for Byzantium. Bursa represents survival. Whoever controls Bursa controls the next direction of power in the region. This is why the sign is not just a military action, it is a long physiology. That is why the sign is not just a military action, it is a long physiological war inside Bursa. Fear is growing outside Bursa. Patience is being tested. Orhan Bey knows that if he attacks without planning, many lives will be wasted, but if he waits long, his enemies will think he is weak. This creates a powerful tension around him. At the same time, the enemies around Orhan are not sleeping. Byzantine commanders, secret spies, Raif Bey, and political players all understand one thing. Usman Bey time is ending and Orhan time is beginning. This transition is dangerous whenever a great leader becomes old or weak, enemies try to attack the next generation. They believe the son will not have the same fire as the father. They believe the state break from inside. They believe brothers, bears, apes, and haunts will fight for influence, but Orhan Bey slowly proves that is not an easy target. His silence is not weakness, his silence is calculation. The emotional center of the story is also connected to Osman Bey. Even when Usman Bey is not always physically active like before, his presence controls the atmosphere. His name still shakes enemies and gives strength to his people, but this also becomes a burden for Orhan. Every decision he makes carries one hidden question: would Usman Bey approve? This makes Orhan journey more human. He is not a perfect hero who knows everything from the start. He is a son, a commander, a husband, a father, and a future ruler. He carries love, pressure, fear, and ambition at the same time. Malhan Horn's rules also becomes very important in this period. She is not only a mother watching her son rise, she is a political mind, a protector of the tribe, and woman who understands the price of power. She knows that Orhan cannot become a leader only because he is Osman's son. He must earn respect. But she also knows that the state needs unity. If the tribe breaks in two sides, enemies will enter through that weakness. So Malhan Horn becomes a bridge between the old power and the new power. She protects Osman's legacy while also preparing the path for Orhan. The beauty of Kurulus Orhan is that it does not power and the new power. She protects Osman's legacy while also preparing the path for Orhan. The beauty of Kurulus Orhan that it does not show the rise of Orhan as a simple victory march. It shows the cost of becoming a ruler. Every success brings a new enemy, every alliance brings a new risk, every mistake can become a wound that enemies use later. Orhan Bey has to understand people, not just rhymes. He must know who is loyal from the heart and who is loyal only because they fear punishment. He must know when to forgive, when to punish, when to attack, and when to wait. This is where the becomes more political and deeper. The older battlefield is still there, but now the real battlefield is larger. The place is Byzantium, the coastal around Bursa, the arrival Turkish bylines, the Mongol pressure, and the inner disputes. The tribe all become part of one big game. Orhan is entering a wall where one wrong marriage, one wrong message, and one wrong alliance or one wrong execution can change everything. This is not only the story of a warrior, this is the story of a state becoming an empire. Orhan Bey connection with Nilüfer Haunt also adds emotional weight to the series. Their relationship is not only romantic, it represents two worlds coming together. Nilüfer carries her own pain, her own identity, and her own struggle. The story shows that conquest is not only about land, it is also about her culture and loyalty. A person can be born in one world and choose another path because of love, justice, and faith, but this choice is never easy. Nilüfer must face suspicion from some people and hatred from others. Her loyalty is tested again and again. At the same time, Orhan marriage politics becomes a source of tension in a historical world. Marriage is not only personal, it can become a political Weapon marriage can build peace, create alliance, stop bloodshed, or open a new conflict. This is why Orhan's emotional life is not separate from his political life. Every relationship around him affects the future of the state. This makes his character complicated because he cannot always choose only with his heart. Sometimes he must choose for the state, and that is where the tragedy of leadership begins. One of the strongest themes in this section of the story is trust. Orhan must decide who to trust. Can he trust every ops who says he is loyal? Can't he trust every babe who smiles in the council? Can he trust Byzantine nobles who speak of peace? Can he trust viral Turkish leaders who promise brotherhood but secretly fear Ottoman growth? Trust become more dangerous than war because betrayal usually comes from close places. The enemy outside the gate is clear, the enemy inside the tent is harder to see. This is why the early part of Cruelest Orhan feels like a storm building slowly. The audience can feel that something big is coming. Bursa is waiting, Osmanli is waiting, the enemies are waiting, the tribe is waiting, and Orhan himself is waiting for the moment when he will no longer be seen as Osman Bey's sons. He wants to become Orhan Bey in his own right. He wants people to say that his state did not weaken after Osman. It became stronger. The script also gives room for deep emotional commentary. Imagine Orhan standing alone at night looking toward Bursa. Him are the tent of his people. In front of him are the walls of a city that has resisted for years. In his heart is the voice of his father. In his mind is the future of a nation. This is not an ordinary moment. This is the moment where history quietly asks him, "Are you ready?" And Orhan's answer is not given through words only. His answer comes through patience. His answer comes through strategy. His answer comes through every sacrifice he accepts without showing pain. That is what makes his rise powerful. He does not need to shout to prove strength. His strength grows in silence, in planning, in controlled anger, and in the ability to carry pain without letting enemies see it. So the beginning of Cruelest Orhan is really about transformation. The sun becomes a leader, the tribe becomes a state, the dream becomes a responsibility, the battlefield becomes political, and the name of Osman becomes a test for Orhan. He must honor that name, but he must also step beyond it because history does not remember only those who inherit a throne. History remembers those who turn inheritance into destiny. This is why reviews connect with Orhan's story. This struggle is not only historical, it is emotional. Every person who has ever carried family expectations can understand him. Every person who has ever been compared to someone greater can understand him. Every person who has ever had to prove themselves in front of doubters can understand him. Orhan Bey's journey is larger because it belongs to history, but it is also personal because it belongs to the heart. Orhan Bey's real test does not begin only when he stands before the walls of Bursa. His real test begins when he must decide what kind of ruler he wants to become. Many men can conquer land, many men can raise swords, and many men can frighten enemies, but not every man can build decks. Justice, our victory. This is the difference between a warrior and a ruler. Orhan Bey understand that a state cannot survive only through fear. Fear can make people silent for a while, but just make people silent for a while, but justice makes people loyal for generations. This is why his journey becomes deeper than war. He is not only trying to defeat Byzantines, he is trying to create a system where people believe that Ottoman rule bring trying to create a system where people believe that Ottoman's rule bring order, safety and dignity. In this new period, Orhan Bey must listen to complaints, punish traitors, protect innocent people, and stop powerful men from abusing weaker ones. This is not easy because every decision creates enemies. When he punishes supporters becomes angry. When he protects a poor villager, some powerful men think he is weakening all traditions. When he forgives someone, others call him soft. When he punishes someone harshly, others call him cruel. Our rules is always just from every side. But Orhan cannot rule according to people noise, he must rule according to truth. The audience should see that Orhan Bey is slowly creating a new state. Mind is Osman Bey time. Survival was the biggest issue the tribe had. Survive attacks, betrayal, hunger and enemies from every side, but now survival alone is not enough. The Ottoman village is becoming larger and a larger state needs law, it needs records, taxes, justice, soldiers, markets and safe. Becoming larger and a larger state needs law, it needs record, tax, church, soldiers, markets and safe roads. Orhan understands that conquest with order creates chaos, so his dream is not only to take Bursa but to make Bursa a center of justice. After it is taken, this is where Orhan's character becomes more mature. He realizes that justice sometimes hurts even the ruler. A man close to him may be guilty, a loyal fighter may commit a wrong act, a powerful ally may demand special treatment. But if Orhan bends the law for his own people, then his enemies will say his justice is fake, so he must show that the law is higher than friendship, higher than blood, and higher than personal emotion. This is one of the hardest lessons of leadership. Nilüfer Houghton also understands these sides of Orhan. She sees that his heart is not cold, but his responsibility forces him to act with discipline. Her own pain teaches her that the place is not a place for simple emotions. She may disagree with Orhan, she may feel wounded by his choices, but she also sees that he is trying to carry a burden not ordinary men can carry. This gives their relationship a sad beauty. Love is still there, but now it lives under the shadow of duty. Horn's position also becomes connected to justice. She must prove that she is not entering the place only to gain influence. If she uses her new place to pressure others, people will turn against her. If she behaves with patience and fairness, she can earn respect. The place women are not only emotional figures in the history, they are political forces and their behavior affects the people around them. Orhan justice must begin at home because a ruler who cannot keep balance in his own place cannot bring balance to a whole state. Malhan Haunt are watches everything with experience. She knows that justice is not only a word spoken in the council, justice must be seen. People must feel it, like the poor must believe that they can speak, the weak must believe they will be protected, the guilty must fear punishment even if they are powerful. Malhan reminds Orhan that Osman Bey's dreams was never only about land, it was about land. Creating a world where oppression would not rule forever. This reminds becomes important because power can easily change people. A man who fought injustice yesterday can become unjust tomorrow if he forgets his roots. The enemies around Orhan do not fear only they fear his justice. A crueler conqueror creator resistance, but a just ruler wins hard. Byzantines can fight Ottoman soldiers, but how can it fight a system that ordinary people begin to trust? This is why Orhan justice becomes a political weapon. When village see that Ottoman rule brings safety, Byzantine influence weakness. When tried see roads becoming safer, the sport Orhan. When people see that their lives can improve under his rule, the enemies are propaganda begins to fail. But justice also creates danger. Some powerful families inside Bursa may pretend to accept Orhan only to protect their wealth. Some rival base may accuse him of using justice as an excuse to control anyone. Some old varies may not understand. Only Orhan spent time on law. When war invading there is, Orhan must explain that his state is not built only on the battlefield, a battlefield victory latest one day, but justice create the future. By the end of this section, Orhan Bey is no longer only seen as commander waiting outside Bursa. He is becoming the founder of a new order. His sword can open the city gates, but his justice will decide whenever those gates remain open to loyalty or rebellion. The audience should feel that Orhan's real gatherness is not only is defecting enemies, but it building a system that even these enemies cannot easily destroy. The console of Bay and the test of loyalty the council sends in Cruelest Orhan carries are different kinds of fight. There may be no clashing sword, but the words spoken in the council can be more dangerous than arrows. This is the place where loyalty is tested, ambition is hidden, and Orhan Bey must prove that he can control strong men without breaking them. Every Bey sitting in the council, his own pride, his own followers, his own history. and his own dreams. Some truly support Orhan, some respect some Osman Bey memories, some are waiting to see whenever Orhan is strong enough, and some may secretly believe that the state should follow their advice more than his. Orhan Bey entered the council not young man asking for permission, but as a ruler who must command respect. Still, respect cannot be forced forever, it must be earned again and again. The may his face, his tone, and his patience and his decision. If he becomes angry too quickly, they may call him immature. If he says silence too long, they may think he is unsure. If he listens too much, they may think they can control him. If he refuses every opinion, they may call him arrogant. This is why the council in a battlefield of balance. This question of Bursa creates the biggest pressure in the council. Some Bay wants a direct attack. They believe waiting too long will weaken morals. They say that soldiers are ready, swords are sharp, and the enemy is afraid. Others warn that Bursa is not an ordinary target. They know the city has strong walls, hidden spots, and Byzantine traps. Orhan must listen to both sides, but in the end decision belongs to him. This is where leadership becomes lonely. Advice comes from many mouths, but responsibility falls on one head. There may also be bad who speak with loyalty but carry hidden jealousy. They may say when we only want the state to be strong, but inside they fear Orhan growing fame. If Bursa falls under Orhan commands, his name will become greater. Some man can accept a leader only while he is still struggling. Once he becomes successful, their hearts become restless. Orhan must recognize this kind of danger. Open rebellion is easier to face than smiling envy. The council also tests the loyalty of old ops. These men fought under Osman Bey. They say when the foundation years, they know the smell of war and sacrifice. Some of them will love Orhan like their own son, but even love does not stop comparison. They remember Osman Bey's style, his courage, his fight, and his directness. Orhan is different. He is more patient, more political, and more controlled. The old ops must learn that different does not mean weakness. Orhan is not Osman, but he carries the same dream in a new way. This section should how Orhan slowly winning the console, not with loud speeches but with clear vision. He explained that Bursa must not only be taken, it must be prepared for Ottoman rules. He tells the ballet that impatience can waste lives. He reminds them that every military matters. Are rulers who that man into death only to prove courage is not brave, he is careless. Real courage is knocking when to wait while others call you weak. Real courage is carrying insults today so that the state can win tomorrow. The council can also become the place where hidden messages appears. Bey may question Orhan's marriage decision. Another may mention Nilüfer's pain indirectly. Someone may ask whether place issues are affecting state decision. Those words make looks respectful, but they carry poison. Orhan must stop such poison without turning the council into a personal argument. He must show that his private life cannot be used to weaken his authority. This is a delicate moment because enemies love to mix family matters With politics, Malhan Hunt may not always sit in the council, but the influence is felt. Many Bays respect her because they know her place in Osman Bey life and in the state's foundation. Her support for Orhan strengthened his high, but she also knows that Orhan cannot be always depend on her shadow. He must become strong enough that he counsel obey him for his own leadership, not only because he is Osman's son and Malhan's child. The council also gives Orhan a chance to identify true loyalty. A true loyalty Bey does not always agree, but he speaks honesty and stands firm after the decision is made. A dangerous Bey agree is public but work against the decision in private. Orhan must learn this difference. Loyalty is not flattery, loyalty is that with commitment. This man go on. The fount of the fortune in the first test of a future rule is the burden of expectation. The second is pain, not abstract pain spoken of in heroic tales, but the raw, humiliating personal pain that strips away illusions of the fortune. Nothing stay of the long a decision delayed became a funeral miracle offered to the wrong man becomes as an ambush. Pride's mistakes for courage becomes a gift with no stone or hand was handed him precisely because it would not allow him to remain a symbol. He had to be a witness to suffering before he could ever to trust it to rule over it. This is the way fortune did not simply train him in battle, it wounded him in maturity. It every burnt village her rode through, every father carrying a dead son, every woman standing before the ruins of a home and skills asking when the state would not see that passed through him and vanished. They assumed they shaped the seriously in his gaze. They built the distance between youth dreaming and the colder, more necessary mind of a leader. A man can inherit a banner in one day but earn the right to keep it only after he understands what those culture beneath it actually suffered. The enemies facing Orhan was not only soldiers in America own commanders raising hostage flags, they were fear, execution, division, and the endless temptation to believe that victory in one battle means safety afterward. Byzantine understood this border better than many who lived on it. Their forests were not miracle stones sketched against the sky, they were instrument pressure symbols of a river order. Then learned how to survive by patience as much as force. Takfors did not need to win every confirmation. Sometimes it was enough for them to keep the fortune bleeding. A harvest destroyed here, a curvature looted there, a spray planted among traders, or a rumors of spread through village. A local alley bought will gold or resettlement pieces by piece. These acts could weaken morals more effectively than open war. Orhan had to learn that leadership meant organizing invisible insults as cruelly as visible ones. The enemy's best weapon was often not steel but timing. They struck where people were already tired. They used uncountily as a blade. They conclude on secession, ascetics, personal revival, wounded pride, and grief to stand off against them. Orhan could not merely be brave, he had to become alert to parents hidden beneath choice. What made his ever cardi was the fortune offered no clean moral simplicity, man openly easily of loyalty. itself by often tangled with hunger, revenge, ambition, and bounded dignity. One village might survive faithfully for years, turn separate under pressure, and make contend with the enemy. One ally might fight beside you in battle, then betray you trust in council because he feels overlooked. One command might speak of religious honors and sacrifice, yet still envy the influence of another man. Orhan was growing into power in a world where people were rarely pure villains or perfect servants. Most were mixture of faith and weakness. Most were trying to survive, and survival can twist judgment until decent people being to justice ugly choice. This is what made Orhan development so dangerous and so profound. He could not rule through in would be destroyed in a week, but if he surrendered completely to suspension, he would become insulted and cursed. The fortune forces him to build a mind capable of reading complexity without becoming morally hollow. That is one of the most difficult transformations any rules must survive. There were also personal losses that no battlefield glossary could balance. The fortune always demands names, and those names are never convenient. They are friends, mentors, loyal fighters, and sometimes people who should have had left to live. Every young hire imagine was place where he will prove himself for fever. Understand that war is also place where he will watches the cost of proof collect around him. Orhan could not remain untouched by death. When death walked beside every compassion, the fallen were not to him. He knew their jokes, their strength, their old injuries, their dreams for their children, their to his father, and the fate they slowly placed in him. To lose such people is not simply to feel sorrow, it is to feel assertion. Could I have moved faster? Should I have listened differently? Did my hesitation open the door to the did my confidence believed me? These questions are the private companion leader, and they rarely disappeared. What matters is whether they break a man or deepen him. In Orhan case, grief did not make him abandon the faith, it made him understand that command is not the right to give order, it is the burden of carrying the consecution of those orders long after every else has fallen silent. This is also where the fortune began revealing Orhan's distinction nature. He did not hunger for war only because was offered. He understood necessity of force, but was the incorrectly interested in what came after force. How long can a religious stay loyal if it only knows fear? Separate conquest from governance. How do you stop victory from rotting into joys? The question began to define him, while others sometimes decision below. Orhan often looked at the border structure, supply lies, trust, networks, loyal, grievance, the effect of justice, the value of discipline within the ranks, the meanings of mercy when used. Rather than sentimentally, he began to see that every battle sits inside a larger rules. Who wins but cannot stables will eventually lose a little. Inspired fear but not loyalty will command silence, not devolution, and a state that grows too quickly without building institution become a game pretending to be a kingdom. These insight did not make Orhan less prized, they make Vikram's powerful. His anger when it came attached itself not its insult but to disorder, betrayals of the people, and threat against continually around him. However, not everyone understood the slow, deeper mode of strength. Some preferred spiritual, some wanted immediate relations for every offense, no matter he border cost the whether whispered that weakness are barriers. Such men often mistake noise for courage because noise is easier to perform, but Orhan was learning to endure, became misunderstood. That ability alone marks him As more than a typical heroic yours, the immature warriors wants approval before action. The future rules accept that some necessary decision will look unimpressive before they reveal their wisdom. Holding back a strike can be harder than delivering one. Waiting for proof can feel more humiliating. Then acting on suspicion, ignition with a useful revival can feel threatened that cutting him down. Yes, history is often shaped by thought, discipline, humility, or harm. To recognize his pride could not be allowed to lead the state. If his ego required conquest satisfaction, his people would effectively pray for it. This is not launching of it is the grammar of endurance. Will the fortune never let a man like entire impatience? There comes a time when thought must become action, when every observation, every wound, every warming but must be into a single unmistakable answer for Orhan. Those moments were transformation because they showed everyone that his resistance that had no come from fear. When he acted with frightening clarity. The same man who had been mired as quiet became decision. The same here warm come mired as lawless. Question revealed, teaching people to accept only one version of him, but a leader who can appear calm until the second, then strike with intelligence and authorities became harder to predict and therefore harder to challenge. The frontier notice and things men who once watches or harm with authority began to see a more dangerous truth. He was not waiting because he lacked still, he was choosing the moment when steel would matter most. So the founder of the fortune was not only external, it cut into Orhan's identity and shaped the type of rules he could become. He learned that safety is never permanent, that grief must not become, that enemies often attack the mind of a people before they attack the walls of a city, and the leadership requires the ability to carry both compassion and severity without allowing either to cancel to other. He came to understand that the banner his father raised could not survive on legend alone. It needed a generation willing convert sacrifice into order, and it is the difficult circulating throat, ambushing funerals, betrayals, confused tension on the repeating of Orhan stopped being merely the son standing beside history. He began becoming the man who could continue it. The fortune did not love him gently, it pressured him, tested him, and demanded more bloodline from him. Because of that pressure, it also revealed him, and once the fortune revealed a true heir, the world around him started to change, whether it wants to or not. A heart divided between sword and mercy. Every great political story becomes unforgettable when power collided with the heart, not because love makes weakness a warrior, because love reveals what kind of a power a warrior truly seeks. A man a war with the world can survive on pride, insecurities, and forces for a long time. But the moment he began to care deeply from someone beyond himself, a second battle began that is more intimate, more dangerous. Orhan's path was never meant to be made only for campaigning and counsel. His emotional life materials because expose the exact tension that would define his role. Could he carry the tenders of a human soul without sacrifice the hardness required by the fortunes? In many stories, here is tested by enemies outside the gate. In a richer story, he is also tested by the possibility of mercy, by attachment, by the fear of losing not just power or land, but a personal man who entered his heart and made victory feel incomplete if it cannot be shared. This is where Orhan's character Beyond the expected arcs of success, the men who enter such stories are often treated by lessers. Narratives are ornaments to confused, but it in a true politics drama. They mirror challenges and turning points. The emotional world around Orhan could not be simple because his life itself was not simple, and once the formed would immediately end with loyalty, tribe, identity, religions, diplomacy, suspension, and the brutal demand of war to love as a man of the fortune is not be me to include. It is to meet while carrying names, historical duties, and enemies in the background. That is why tensions on the border, such as electricity, it can just float above reality. It resists of the power. A look can mean trust offer where mistructure would be safer. A promise can feel heavier than on it before a consul, and a moment of emotional honesty can change politically calculation because suddenly the future is no longer an abstraction. It had a face, or Orhan. Any recent attachment would face him to confront and community truth. The man capable of building a state must decide whether that state will only know his disciplines or whether it will also know his humanity. This is not the small question. Mercury is a brutal age, can be mistaken for weakness, and yet a ruler without mercy eventually becomes feared often by those protects or harm emotions. Struggle made him more than a sword in motions. They motions him reaction with contractions. With does justice look like when the guilty are confused by the innocent? What happened when personal feeling and political necessity collide head on? Can a future be allowed himself to trust where the entire structure around him has trained him to doubt? There are not private romantic consort mixing from governance. There are early rehearsals for rules itself. A man who cannot balance love and duty will not suddenly become balanced. It matter of a law and empire. The state suffers. It had murders feeling entirety. The people live under a matching bearing a small faces or ungranted beings to in how seriously he take this problem. He did not treat emotions as a distraction. He treated it is another realm in which trust must be future. And the pain of that fight is impatience because the closer leader comes to someone, the more variable his decision become. The enemies can use affection and rivals can reciprocate compassion and can question judgment. Can every loyal people can worry that here is become soft or Han had to endure to Curl's reality that the every feeling provides his humanity could also be turned against his immediately. This is how political wars intimacy. Nothing is allowed to remain purely person. Every silence became a rumors, every kindness, every alliance, every sacrifice is a signal. Authors will try decode and this pressure alone grants love in such a story. It's tragic graduation. It is not easy, not decorative, not from conclusion. It comes one more battlefield where Orhan must learn what he is willing to risk, what he is willing to protect, and where he must draw lines, even from lines it tears and him from within. And the same time emotional struggle, sharpness, or understanding of the people he could eventually rule. A man who has domination rarely understands loyalty. It is fuller sense he knows obsession, fear, reward, punishment, but not the quiet reason why stay faithful even when it cost them. Orhan, her divided between sword and mercy, allowed him to glimpse those quieter motives he how to Grief can make a personal, irritational, how love can inspire courage rather than ideology, how shame can drive betrayals, how trust one broken cannot simply be altered back into expressions. These insights made him less naive and more just. They taught him thought governing people is not like moving tropes. Every law touches invisible emotional hope, dignity, resentment, a memory. Every punishment carries symbols, meaning beyond the immediate offense. Every act of a mercy heals to depending on who receive it and why. The rulers who has never wrestles with his own divided heart will often rules often crowd curtly or inner conflict protected him from becoming that kind of shallow. Still, the story would mean little of his transfer came without cost. The real transformation demands sacrifice. There are moments when the heart must accept wound because destiny does not. Resignation for Orhan loves could be not become escape. He was not allowed the luxury of adopting responsibility in the name of personal peace. This is that make him after a lose could not become luxury of responsibility is the name of personal peace. This is what makes him tragic and admiring at once. He longs but he does not flee. He feels deep but he does not let feeling urge his obligation. He wants a life where affection, trust and belonging are possible, yet he knows that enemies are always waiting for specialists such are desired soften a little posture, so he learned the harsh disciplines of marrying, longing without letting in government him. This does not make him cold on the way. It makes him more poignant. The audience is not a man untouched by emotions, but a man who pays for every necessary decision was peaceful of that cost is what gives his authority morals weight. The division between sword and mercy also creates on the sun most completion dimension is a cruelest. Orhan was never flawed narrative. The transformation from reactive youth into mature statements. The younger version warriors of belief strength means never hesitation, never bending, never. But as Orhan matures, he begins to understand that the blade is only one instrument of order. Mercy, when rooted its principle instead of weakness, can its legitimacy from more powerfully than fear. Protection can inspire despite loyalty than domination. A rule who listens can sometimes prevent a heart then domination. A rule who listen can sometimes prevent he rebels. Harsh man would accidentally create yet border version does not urge him. It only places the sword in a larger moral framework. Orhan does not become less dangerous, he becomes dangerous in a more completely way. He can still strike with still punish, still destroy those who threaten the people, but he no longer confused destruction with leadership itself. He learned that the strongest state is not that one skill. It is one that gives people the clearest reason to live faithfully beneath its orders. So was watch Orhan standing between battle and trending justice and affections of law and compassion. We are not witness a side story. We are the creation of the exact role history needed after a founder. Founder often America's fire builders of continuity must also understand healing. A state cannot expand forever or fully alone. Eventually it must become habitable. It must become a place where minds believe someone hears them, where merchant trust the here come Americans road enough to travel it, where children sleep because he was strand, where love is not always crushed beneath strictly or undivided hurt, painful, as it became the proof that the man one that achieved that balance. He remains a warrior, yes, remains capable of iron, but inside him something grow the knowledge that true rules ignores the endless victory of the blade. It is the difficult art of preserving a people without losing one's own soul in the procession. The night of betrayed, every rising power eventually meets the darkness within. All enemies beyond the fortune can be conquered, tracked, and confronted, but betrayal, it forces more compassion because it grows never trusted, feed on conformity, strikes within the shape of belonging. For Orhan, there had to come a night when all the suspension, half-finished whispers, stretches, plans, flared messages, and unsealed incessant coverage into the undeniable truth. This is the moment that separatists promising hair from a radical political forces. It is only thing to face declared enemies choosing openly under a banner. It is another to discover that the most dangerous hand reaching towards your throat may belongs to someone who once sat near your fire. The emotional voice of betrayal gathering then is physical one because it does not only attack your body on your plans, it attacks your judgment. It asks whether you were blind, whether loyalty itself it is fantasy, whether miraculously invited, trusted, whatever. Every memory must now be in a reflection through suspension. A man can recover from wonders, recovering from volatility, trusted in for more complicated. The beauty of such a point lies to how loud it usually been prepared beneath the surface. Betrayal, it most devastating. What is not roots may be too revolting. Resentment in a man who felt unseen. Mabel, it grew from fear or unrise would reduce anyone. Influence Mabel, gold from the enemy. A weak man imagined he could master both sides without concussions. Mabel to gravitation, board of fear, finally found the right reason of blood into whatever he is. Its original betrayed on the fortune never appears alone. It drags confusion behind it. Message arrived too late. Preservation fails to reach a camp. A trusted road become a deep trap. Someone's excuse sound almost believable until another detail shattered it. Then found the camp felt ordinary on the surface, but underrated that ordinary rams. Sometimes he had already been poisoned, eaten, climbed, or harmed. Greatest challenge is more merely coaches the derailleur. It is preventing the entire structure of trust from collapsing around him before he does. This is why the night of betrayal must be written not as revelation but atmosphere. The air itself should feel tense as throughout the fortune knows before the character do that. Sometimes scared it about the broken horse grow restlessness. Managers arrive, be breathless, a throat prickles in a corridor where shadow suddenly seems too deep. The bold man appears to climb, the right man disappeared at the wrong moment. Sometimes be the outer line of safety, enemy's eyes within patient hunger, concuting on confusion. Inside the camp of two open, great figure of our than any battering rams could or han, carrying all the lessons are the previous year senses that the danger is no longer random, it has shape, it has plan behind it, and when he truth finally burst into open, it must hit with moral forces, not just plot confusion, because what breaks it instance is more than a stability. It is fragile, human faith, and sharp breath, sharp petals, and sharp prayers should mean sometimes prevent permanent. Orhan, responsible in such a moment, defined is maturity, a lesson men wander confused either by playing range or range alone would not be able to stop, would confirm every doubt his enemies already nourishing. What makes Orhan complementing is that betrayal forces him to annihilate emotions and control at the high level. He cannot pretend not to feel the insult. He cannot act as thought. Transition is simply another technical obstacle. It is personal and he knows it, but he knows also that personal fury must be shaped into public justice. The camp is watching, the elders was watching, the loyal fighting already shaken are watching to stop. See whether he can become standingness at the exact second stand lines is hardest is maintained. This is the where future rules American was terrifying clarity. Orhan does not deny why is bound. He resigns through it. He chooses to think while bleeding inside. He separated rumors from fact, fear from proof, vinegars from lawful punishment, and by doing so he proves that betrayal may wound his truth, but it sizes his judgment. What follows must be survived not because currently is attractive, but because disordered to stage can destroy everything. Usman built the trial cannot be trusted at private disappointment, he repression or threat to community itself. The punishment therefore carries symbols, meaning it tells allies that loyalty with still matters. It tells enemies that impressional comparison has discovered, not hidden. It tells the undecided. The camp against wrote yet eventually in punishment Orhan complexity matter. He understands the loyalty belongs